Have you ever stood at a crossroads in your life, knowing that the choice you make next could change everything? That moment when your palms are sweaty, your heart is racing, and there's this voice in your head asking over and over, what if I choose wrong? What if I make a mistake I can't undo? I think we've all been there, that feeling of standing on the edge of something huge, something life-changing, and not knowing which way to jump. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and welcome to English Club Podcast. I am so happy you're here with me today. Whether you're listening while you're commuting to work, or studying at home, or maybe taking a walk, thank you for choosing to spend this time with me, learning English and exploring this really important topic together. You know, I was actually thinking about this topic just this morning. I was looking through some old photos on my phone, and I came across a picture from about 5 years ago. It was taken the day before I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. And looking at that photo, I could see it in my eyes, that mix of excitement and terror, that uncertainty about what was coming next. It made me think about all the big decisions I've made in my life, the ones that changed my path, the ones that made who I am today. And I thought, wow, this would be such a valuable topic to discuss, especially for English learners. Because being able to talk about your life choices, your decisions, your turning points, this is such an important communication skill. Today, we're going to talk all about big life decisions. We're going to learn the vocabulary and phrases you need to discuss major choices in English. We're going to explore different types of life decisions people face. And most importantly, we're going to share stories and insights that I hope will help you think about your own decisions, past and future. This topic is so important because everyone faces big decisions. Maybe you're deciding whether to move to a new country. Maybe you're choosing what to study in university. Maybe you're thinking about changing careers or ending a relationship or starting a business. Whatever it is, being able to talk about these decisions helps you process them, get advice, and connect with others who've been through similar experiences. And being able to discuss these things in English, that's incredibly valuable.
You might need to explain your life choices in a job interview. You might want to share your story with new friends. You might need to seek advice from a mentor or counselor. So today, we're going to make sure you have the language skills to talk about your big life decisions confidently and naturally. Okay, before we dive in, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe to our channel for more English learning podcasts. It really helps us create more content for you. And if you find this episode meaningful, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support means everything to us. All right, let's get started. Let me begin by sharing one of the biggest decisions I've ever made, and I'll tell you the whole story because I think it will help you understand what we're going to talk about today. About 6 years ago, I had what most people would call a good life. I had a stable job at a company. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid well. I had a nice apartment, I had routines and friendships, and everything was, well, comfortable, safe, predictable. But I wasn't happy. I mean, I wasn't unhappy exactly. I was just, I don't know how to describe it, flat, uninspired. I would wake up in the morning and think, is this it? Is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? I had always been interested in teaching and education. I loved languages. I loved helping people learn, but I had never pursued it as a career. I had studied business in university because it seemed practical and safe. I had taken the corporate job because that's what you were supposed to do. But I kept thinking about teaching. I kept imagining what it would be like to do something I was passionate about. And one day, I saw an advertisement for a teaching certification program, and I thought, what if? That question, what if, it stuck in my head. What if I became a teacher? What if I left my comfortable job and took a risk? What if I actually pursued what I wanted instead of what was safe? For months, I wrestled with this decision. This was a big one. If I quit my job to do the teaching program, I would lose my steady income. I would have to use my savings. I would be starting over in a new career. What if I failed? What if I made this huge change and realized I had made a terrible mistake? My family thought I was crazy. They said, Emily, you have a good job. Why would you throw that away? What about your future? What about financial security? Be realistic.
My friends were divided. Some supported me. Others thought I was being impractical. One friend said, "You're going through a phase. Just wait it out. The feeling will pass."
but it didn't pass. The desire to teach, to do something meaningful, it only got stronger. And I realized I had a choice to make, a big, scary, life-changing choice. I could stay in my safe job, knowing I would always wonder what if. Or I could take the risk, knowing I might fail, but at least I would know I tried. After months of anxiety and doubt, I made my decision. I enrolled in the teaching program. I gave notice at my job, and I jumped. Was it scary? Absolutely terrifying. Did I have moments of thinking I had made a huge mistake? Oh yes, many times. But did I regret it? Not for a single second. That decision changed my life. It led me to teaching English, which led me to creating educational content, which eventually led me to this podcast, talking to you right now. If I hadn't made that decision, I would be in a completely different place, probably still sitting in that office, still wondering what if. I'm telling you this story because I want you to understand something. Big life decisions are hard. They're scary. There's no guarantee they'll work out. But sometimes, the biggest risk is not taking a risk at all. Now, let's talk about vocabulary. When we discuss life decisions in English, there are some really important words and phrases you need to know. Let me teach you the key ones. First, we have the word decision itself. A decision is a choice you make after thinking about different options. We make small decisions every day, like what to eat for breakfast. But we also make big decisions that can change our lives. We use the phrase make a decision or come to a decision. For example, after weeks of thinking, I finally made a decision about my career. Or, it took me a long time to come to a decision about where to live. We also say reach a decision, especially in formal contexts. The committee reached a decision after lengthy discussion. A related word is choice. A choice is an option or alternative. You might have several choices when making a decision. For example, I had to choose between staying in my hometown or moving to a new city. Both choices had pros and cons. We use the word crossroads to describe a point where you must make an important decision. Crossroads literally means where two roads cross, but figuratively it means a critical decision point. For example, I was at a crossroads in my life. I had to decide which path to take. Another important term is turning point. A turning point is a moment when an important change happens. For example, moving abroad was a turning point in my life. Everything changed after that. We use the phrase life-changing to describe decisions that significantly alter your life. For example, getting married is a life-changing decision, or choosing your university major is a life-changing choice. The word consequence is important. Consequences are the results or effects of a decision. For example, I had to think about the consequences of quitting my job. Every decision has consequences, both positive and negative. We talk about weighing options or weighing pros and cons. This means carefully considering the good and bad points of each choice. For example, I spent weeks weighing my options before deciding, or I made a list to weigh the pros and cons of each choice. The phrase make up your mind means to make a decision, especially after uncertainty. For example, I couldn't make up my mind about which job offer to accept, or once I made up my mind, I felt relieved. We use hesitate when we're unsure or reluctant to make a decision. For example, I hesitated for months before making the decision, or don't hesitate to ask for advice if you're struggling with a big decision. The word regret is important. To regret something means to feel sorry about it or wish you had done differently. For example, I don't regret my decision to move abroad, even though it was difficult. Or, do you regret not studying medicine like your parents wanted? We say take a risk when making a decision that involves uncertainty or potential danger. For example, I took a risk by starting my own business, or sometimes you have to take risks to achieve your dreams. The phrase leap of faith describes making a decision based on hope or belief rather than certainty. For example, moving to a country where I didn't speak the language was a real leap of faith. We use the word commit or commitment to talk about dedicating yourself to a decision. For example, once I made the decision, I fully committed to it, or marriage is a big commitment. Another useful phrase is point of no return. This describes a moment when you can't go back or undo a decision. For example, once I sold my apartment, I reached the point of no return. I had to move forward with my plan.
Let me give you some example sentences using this vocabulary. I'm at a major crossroads in my career. I need to decide whether to stay in my current field or completely change direction. Choosing to study abroad was a turning point in my life. It opened up so many opportunities I never expected. This is a life-changing decision, so I need to think carefully about all the consequences. I've been weighing my options for weeks, trying to decide which job offer to accept. I finally made up my mind to end the relationship. It was difficult, but I knew it was the right choice. I don't regret taking the risk to start my own company, even though it didn't work out as I hoped. Moving across the country was a leap of faith, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Once I committed to the decision, I stopped second-guessing myself and moved forward. See how these words and phrases work together? They help us talk about decisions in a clear, natural way. Now let me teach you some verbs we commonly use when discussing decisions. We say decide or choose when making a choice. I decided to go back to school. I chose the university based on its reputation. We use consider when thinking about options. I'm considering several different career paths. Have you considered the financial implications? We say deliberate when thinking carefully and at length. I deliberated for months before making the decision. We deliberated as a family before deciding to move. We use contemplate for deep, serious thinking. I've been contemplating whether to end this relationship. She contemplated the decision for a long time. We say struggle when finding it hard to decide. I struggled with the decision for weeks. Are you struggling to choose between the two options? We use the phrase agonize over for very difficult, painful decision-making. I agonized over whether to tell the truth or stay silent. She agonized over the choice for months. We say opt for when choosing one option. I opted for the smaller company because it offered more growth opportunities. He opted for early retirement. We use commit to when dedicating to a choice. I committed to the plan and didn't look back. Once you commit to a decision, you need to follow through. We say stick with when continuing with a choice despite difficulties. I decided to stick with my original plan. Are you going to stick with this career or try something new? We use reconsider when thinking about changing a decision. After hearing the news, I reconsidered my decision. Maybe you should reconsider before it's too late. We say second guess when doubting a decision you've made. I kept second guessing my choice to move. Try not to second guess yourself so much. Let's practice these verbs in context. I'm considering 3 different universities, each with different advantages. After deliberating with my partner, we decided to buy the house. I've been contemplating a career change for over a year now. I really struggled with the decision to leave my hometown. I agonized over whether to accept the promotion because it would mean relocating. In the end, I opted for the position that offered better work-life balance. Once I committed to learning English, I practiced every single day. Even when it got difficult, I stuck with my decision to start my own business. After getting new information, I reconsidered my choice and changed my mind. I try not to second-guess my decisions once I've made them. These verbs help you express the process of decision-making in English, from the initial consideration through to sticking with your choice. Now let me talk about different types of big life decisions people face. Understanding these categories will help you talk about your own experiences and relate to other stories. One major category is career decisions. These include choosing what to study, selecting your first job, deciding to change careers, choosing whether to pursue further education, deciding to start a business, or choosing whether to accept a promotion or relocation for work. Career decisions are huge because they affect so much of your life. Your career impacts your income, your daily routine, where you live, your social circle, your sense of identity and purpose. So these decisions carry a lot of weight. I'll give you a personal example. When I decided to leave my corporate job to become a teacher, that was a major career decision. It affected my income dramatically, it changed my daily life completely, it altered my future trajectory. That single decision rippled through every aspect of my life. Another major category is relationship decisions. These include choosing whether to commit to a relationship, deciding to get married or divorced, choosing to have children or not, deciding whether to reconcile with family members you're estranged from, or choosing to end friendships that aren't healthy. Relationship decisions are deeply personal and emotional. They involve other people, which makes them even more complex. You're not just thinking about yourself, but about how your choice affects others.
I remember when I had to decide whether to end a long-term relationship that wasn't working. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I cared about the person, we had history, but I knew deep down we weren't right for each other. Making that decision felt like I was breaking something precious. But sometimes you have to let go of something good to find something better, or even just to find peace. A third category is location decisions. These include choosing where to go to university, deciding whether to move to a new city or country, choosing whether to stay in your hometown or leave, deciding whether to move closer to or further from family, or choosing between urban and rural living. Location decisions are interesting because they affect so many other aspects of life. Where you live determines your opportunities, your lifestyle, the people you meet, the experiences you have. And in our globalized world, people are more mobile than ever, so these decisions are increasingly common. I have a friend who decided to move from a small town to a major city. This decision completely transformed her life. She found career opportunities she never would have had in the small town. She met her partner in the city. She discovered interests and hobbies she didn't know existed. But she also struggled with being far from family and with the fast pace and expensive city life. Every decision has trade-offs. Another category is education decisions. These include choosing your field of study, deciding whether to pursue higher education, choosing between different schools or programs, deciding whether to study abroad, or choosing whether to return to education later in life. Education decisions are particularly significant because they often set you on a certain path. What you study influences what careers are available to you. Where you study affects your network and opportunities. These decisions made in your late teens or early 20s can influence the rest of your life. I chose to study business in university, which wasn't really my passion. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had studied education or languages instead. But I've also learned that your initial education doesn't have to define you forever. Many people, including me, change directions later. The path is rarely straight. Financial decisions are another major category. These include deciding whether to take on debt for education, choosing whether to buy property or rent, deciding how to invest your money, choosing whether to take a lower-paying job you love or a higher-paying job for security, or deciding whether to support family members financially. Financial decisions are stressful because money affects so many aspects of life. We need money for security, for opportunities, for taking care of ourselves and others. But money isn't everything. Sometimes the right decision isn't the most lucrative one. I took a significant pay cut when I left my corporate job to teach. That was a scary financial decision. I had to adjust my lifestyle, I had to budget more carefully, I had less financial cushion. But the trade-off was doing work I found meaningful. For me, that trade-off was worth it. For someone else in different circumstances, it might not be. Health decisions can also be life-changing. These include choosing between different medical treatments, deciding whether to have surgery, choosing to make major lifestyle changes for health, deciding how to handle a serious diagnosis, or choosing whether to pursue alternative treatments. Health decisions are uniquely challenging because they often involve uncertainty and fear. You're making choices about your body, your life, sometimes with incomplete information, and the stakes feel incredibly high. I've been fortunate not to face major health decisions myself, but I've watched loved ones struggle with them. I watched my aunt decide how to treat her cancer. She had to choose between aggressive treatment with serious side effects or a more conservative approach. There was no clear right answer. She had to make the best choice she could with the information available, knowing it would profoundly affect her quality of life. Ethical or moral decisions represent another category. These include choosing whether to speak up about wrongdoing, deciding whether to tell a difficult truth, choosing whether to prioritize principle or practicality, deciding whether to maintain or break a commitment, or choosing how to handle conflicts between personal values and external pressures. These decisions test our character and values. They're often not about what's easy or beneficial for us, but about what we believe is right. I once had to decide whether to report a serious problem at work. Reporting it was the right thing to do, but it would make me unpopular and potentially damage my career. I struggled with this decision. In the end, I did report it, and yes, there were negative consequences for me, but I could live with myself, which I couldn't have if I had stayed silent. Now, let me talk about some common fears and challenges people face when making big decisions.
Understanding these can help you recognize them in your own decision-making process. One major fear is the fear of making the wrong choice. We worry, what if I choose badly? What if there was a better option I didn't see? What if I regret this? This fear can be paralyzing. It can keep you stuck, unable to decide, as time passes and opportunities slip away. I've experienced this fear many times. When I was deciding whether to leave my job, I was terrified of making the wrong choice. But here's something I've learned. In many cases, there isn't one right answer and one wrong answer. There are just different paths with different outcomes. The path you choose becomes the right path because you commit to it and make the most of it. Another common fear is fear of change. Even when we're unhappy with our current situation, change is scary. We know what we have now, even if it's not great. But we don't know what the alternative would be like. This uncertainty makes us hesitant. I see this fear in people all the time. They stay in jobs they hate because at least they know what to expect. They remain in relationships that don't fulfill them because being alone is frightening. They live in places where they're unhappy because moving is overwhelming. Change is genuinely difficult. It requires adapting, learning new things, being uncomfortable. But growth only happens outside your comfort zone. Sometimes you have to embrace the discomfort of change to find something better. Fear of judgment is another big one. We worry about what other people will think of our decision.
Will my family be disappointed? Will my friends think I'm making a mistake? Will people judge me? This fear is particularly strong in cultures with collectivist values, where family and community opinions carry great weight. But even in more individualistic cultures, we still care about others' opinions. I felt this acutely when I left my corporate job. I knew people would judge me. I knew they would think I was being foolish or irresponsible. And yes, some people did judge me. But I learned that you can't live your life for other people's approval. It's your life. You're the one who has to live with your choices. Fear of failure is huge. What if I try this new path and fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't work out? This fear prevents so many people from pursuing their dreams. They don't start the business because it might fail. They don't apply for the job because they might get rejected. They don't take the risk because they might not succeed. But here's the thing about failure. It's not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Almost everyone who has achieved something meaningful has failed along the way. Failure teaches you. It shows you what doesn't work. It makes you stronger and wiser. When I started creating educational content, I failed many times. My first videos were terrible. My early lessons didn't connect with students. I made so many mistakes. But each failure taught me something. The failures were necessary steps on the path to getting better. Fear of regret haunts many decision makers. What if I make this choice and later wish I hadn't? What if I look back with regret? This is a tricky one, because you can't know the future. You can't know for certain how you'll feel about a decision years from now. All you can do is make the best choice you can with the information and wisdom you have now. I've made decisions I later questioned, but I try not to regret them because I made those choices for good reasons at the time. I was doing the best I could. That's all any of us can do. Another challenge is decision fatigue. This is when you're so overwhelmed by the decision, having thought about it for so long, that you can't think clearly anymore. You're exhausted from the mental and emotional energy the decision requires. I definitely experienced this when deciding about my career change. I had thought about it so much, analyzed it from every angle, that I was mentally exhausted. Eventually, I realized I had to just decide, even if I wasn't 100% certain, because the indecision itself was becoming harmful. Pressure from others is a major challenge too. Family, friends, partners, society, they all have opinions about what you should do. And sometimes their pressure, however well-intentioned, makes it harder to hear your own inner voice. My parents pressured me to stay in my corporate job. They meant well. They wanted security for me. But their pressure made my decision harder because I felt like choosing the teaching path meant letting them down. I had to learn to respectfully listen to others' perspectives while ultimately trusting myself to make my own choice. It's my life. I'm the one who will live with the consequences, not them.
Analysis paralysis is another issue. This is when you overthink a decision to the point where you can't actually make it. You keep analyzing, researching, considering, but never actually choosing. Some analysis is good. You should think carefully about big decisions. But there's a point where more analysis doesn't help. At some point, you have to accept that you won't have perfect information, and you have to make a choice anyway. I tend toward analysis paralysis myself. I'm an overthinker. I've had to learn to set deadlines for decisions. I tell myself, I will make this decision by this date. Having that deadline forces me to stop analyzing and actually choose. Now, let me share some strategies and insights about making big life decisions. These are things I've learned through experience, through watching others, and through reflection. First, know yourself. This sounds simple, but it's profound. The better you understand yourself, your values, your needs, your strengths, your priorities, the better equipped you are to make decisions that are right for you. What do you truly value? Not what you think you should value or what others value, but what actually matters to you. Is it security, adventure, creativity, helping others, family, independence, achievement? Getting clear on your core values helps you evaluate options. What are your non-negotiables? What do you absolutely need to be happy? What are you unwilling to compromise on? Knowing this creates boundaries and filters for decisions. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Understanding these helps you assess whether you're capable of handling the challenges a particular decision might bring.
I spend time journaling and reflecting to know myself better. It's an ongoing process. The better I know myself, the more confident I am in my decisions. Second, gather information, but don't wait for perfect information. You need to research your options, understand the implications, seek relevant knowledge. But you'll never have complete certainty. I spend time journaling and reflecting to know myself better. It's an ongoing process. The better I know myself, the more confident I am in my decisions. Second, gather information, but don't wait for perfect information. You need to research your options, understand the implications, seek relevant knowledge. But you'll never have complete certainty. At some point, you have to make a decision with the information available. When I was deciding about the teaching program, I researched thoroughly. I talked to teachers, I looked at job prospects and salaries, I investigated different programs, I gathered a lot of information, but I couldn't know for certain how things would turn out. Eventually, I had to accept the uncertainty and decide anyway. When I was deciding about leaving my job, I asked myself, what's the worst that could happen? The worst case was that teaching didn't work out and I had to find another job. Would that be difficult and embarrassing? Yes. Would it ruin my life forever? No. I could survive that. Recognizing this made the decision less terrifying. Sixth, think long-term, not just short-term. Big decisions should be evaluated in the context of your whole life, not just the immediate future. Yes, some decisions have immediate consequences that matter, but try to imagine yourself years from now. Which decision will you be glad you made? Which path leads to the life you want to live? I use a technique called the regret minimization framework. I imagine myself at 80 years old looking back on my life. Which choice would I regret not making? This long-term perspective often clarifies what really matters. Seventh, accept that no decision is permanent. We often treat big decisions as if they're set in stone forever. But most decisions can be changed if they turn out to be wrong. You can change careers again, you can move back, you can end a relationship that's not working. Yes, changing course can be difficult, there are costs, but you're not trapped. If you make a decision and it doesn't work out, you can make a different decision. Life is not a single irreversible path. Knowing this takes some pressure off. You're not deciding your entire future in one moment, you're just choosing the next step. Eighth, be willing to make decisions with uncertainty. You will never be 100% certain. There will always be unknowns, always be risk. If you wait for absolute certainty, you'll never decide. Part of being an adult is making important choices without complete information. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Get comfortable with uncertainty. Ninth, once you decide, commit. Don't half-heartedly pursue your choice while keeping one foot in the other option. Don't constantly second-guess yourself. Make the decision, commit to it fully, and give it your best effort.
This doesn't mean you can never change your mind, but while you're on a path, really walk that path. Don't undermine your decision by constantly questioning it. When I left my corporate job, I committed fully to teaching. I didn't keep looking at corporate job postings. I didn't maintain a plan B. I put all my energy into making my choice work. This full commitment gave me the best chance of success.
10th, learn from every decision, regardless of outcome. Every choice you make, whether it works out as you hoped or not, teaches you something about yourself, about the world, about decision-making. If a decision works out well, great. Learn what factors made it successful. If it doesn't work out, that's valuable too. Learn what went wrong, what you would do differently, what signs you might have missed. I've learned as much from decisions that didn't work out as from ones that did, maybe more. The mistakes taught me lessons I wouldn't have learned otherwise. Let me share another personal story to illustrate some of these principles. A few years ago, I was in a relationship that was comfortable but not deeply fulfilling. We got along fine, there was no major problem, but there was also no real passion or deep connection. I struggled with whether to stay or leave. On one hand, the relationship was fine. It was comfortable. Breaking up would hurt my partner and disrupt my life. On the other hand, I knew deep down this wasn't the right person for me. But I worried. What if I leave and regret it? What if I don't find anyone better? What if I'm being unreasonable to want more? I spent months agonizing over this decision. I made pro and con lists, I sought advice from friends, I thought about it constantly, and I became paralyzed by the decision. Finally, I realized something. The fact that I was spending months agonizing over whether to stay in the relationship was itself an answer. If the relationship were right, I wouldn't be this conflicted. My prolonged uncertainty was a sign. I also realized that staying because I was afraid of being alone or afraid I wouldn't find someone better, those were terrible reasons to stay. I deserved better. My partner deserved better. We both deserved to be with someone who chose us enthusiastically, not someone who stayed out of fear. I made the decision to end the relationship. It was hard. It hurt. There were difficult conversations and tears and guilt, but it was the right decision. Within a year, I met someone who was so much better suited for me, and my ex met someone better for him too. That decision taught me several things. It taught me to trust my gut when something feels off. It taught me that avoiding short-term pain can lead to long-term unhappiness. It taught me that sometimes what looks like the harder choice in the moment is actually the easier choice in the long run. And it taught me that I have more resilience than I thought. I can handle difficult changes. Now, let me talk about discussing your decisions in English. How do you actually talk about your life choices in conversation? When telling the story of a decision, you typically follow a structure. You set the context, explain the options you had, describe your decision-making process, state the decision you made, and explain the outcome or impact. For example, a few years ago, I was working in marketing, but I felt unfulfilled. This is context. I had to decide whether to stay in my stable job or pursue my passion for teaching. These are the options. I spent months weighing the pros and cons and talking to people in education. This is the process. Eventually, I decided to leave my job and enroll in a teaching certification program. This is the decision. It was scary at first, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. This is the outcome. See the structure? Context, options, process, decision, outcome. This makes your story clear and easy to follow. When talking about decisions you're currently facing, you might say, I'm at a crossroads right now. I need to decide whether to accept a job offer abroad or stay close to family. I've been struggling with a big decision about my relationship. I'm not sure whether to stay and work on it or end things. I'm trying to figure out whether to go back to school or keep working. It's a really tough choice. I'm facing a major decision about my career path. I'm not sure which direction to take. These phrases show you're in the process of deciding, that you haven't made up your mind yet. When discussing how you made a decision, you might say, I made a list of pros and cons for each option. I talked to people who had made similar decisions to get their perspective. I gave myself a deadline to decide so I wouldn't keep overthinking it. I tried to imagine my life 5 years from now with each choice. I listened to my gut feeling about what felt right. In the end, I went with my instincts. These phrases describe your decision-making process.
When talking about decisions you've made, you might say, I decided to move abroad and it changed my life completely. I chose to prioritize my family over my career advancement. I made the difficult decision to end my engagement. I opted to study medicine instead of law, and I've never looked back.
I committed to starting my own business despite the risks. These phrases clearly state the decision and often hint at whether you're happy with it. When expressing certainty about a decision, you might say, I'm confident this is the right choice for me. I have no doubts about this decision. I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. I feel really good about this choice. This decision feels absolutely right. These phrases show conviction and certainty. When expressing uncertainty, you might say, I'm not entirely sure I'm making the right choice. I have some doubts about this decision. I'm still a bit uncertain about whether this is the right path. I'm second-guessing my decision a little bit. Part of me wonders if I should have chosen differently. These phrases show honest uncertainty, which is natural with big decisions. When talking about regrets or lessons learned, you might say, looking back, I wish I had handled that differently. If I could do it over, I would make a different choice. I learned a valuable lesson from that decision. That mistake taught me a lot about myself. I don't regret my decision, even though it didn't work out as planned. These phrases show reflection and growth. When encouraging someone else facing a decision, you might say, trust yourself. You know what's right for you. There's no perfect answer. You just have to choose and commit. Whatever you decide, make sure it aligns with your values. Take your time. Don't let anyone pressure you into deciding before you're ready. Listen to your gut. It's usually right. These supportive phrases can help someone who's struggling with a decision. Let me share some more personal experiences to give you more examples of how to talk about decisions. When I talk about deciding to move to a new city, I might say, I had been living in my hometown for my entire life, and I felt like I needed a change. I wanted to experience life in a bigger city, so I decided to apply for jobs in several major cities. When I got an offer in a city I'd always been curious about, I took a leap of faith and moved. It was terrifying to leave everything familiar, but it was also incredibly exciting. That decision taught me I'm more adaptable than I thought. I made new friends, discovered new interests, and grew so much as a person. When discussing a decision I struggled with, I might say, a few years ago, I was offered a promotion that would have meant significantly more money and prestige.
But it also would have required much longer hours and more stress. I really struggled with this decision because the offer was so tempting from a career perspective, but I knew it would take a toll on my personal life and well-being. After a lot of deliberation, I turned down the promotion. Some people thought I was crazy to pass up that opportunity, but for me, having time for my life outside work was more important than the career advancement. I don't regret that decision at all. I once decided to go into business with a friend. We had a great idea, and we were both excited about it. But unfortunately, the business didn't succeed, and it damaged our friendship. Looking back, I learned several important lessons from that experience. I learned the importance of having clear agreements and boundaries in business relationships. I learned that passion for an idea isn't enough. You also need a solid business plan. And I learned that some friendships aren't meant to survive business partnerships. It was a painful lesson, but a valuable one. See how these examples incorporate the vocabulary and structures we've discussed while telling authentic stories? Now, let me talk about cultural differences in decision-making. Different cultures approach big life decisions differently, and understanding this can help you navigate conversations with people from diverse backgrounds. In some cultures, individual choice is highly valued. People are expected to make their own decisions based on their personal preferences and goals. In other cultures, family or community input is much more important. Decisions are made collectively, or at least with significant consideration of family wishes. Neither approach is better, they're just different. Understanding this can help you avoid judgment when someone's decision-making process looks different from yours. In some cultures, taking risks is celebrated. Entrepreneurship, career changes, bold moves, these are admired. In other cultures, stability and security are more valued. Making the safe, stable choice is seen as wise and responsible. Again, neither is wrong. Different values lead to different decisions. Some cultures have more rigid expectations about life timelines.
You should marry by a certain age, have children by a certain age, achieve certain milestones on a particular schedule. Other cultures are more flexible about these timelines.
These cultural expectations can create additional pressure when making decisions. If you're choosing to deviate from cultural norms, you might face judgment or pressure, which makes the decision even harder. I've experienced this in some ways. In my culture, there's an expectation to be established in a career by your late 20s or early 30s. When I made a major career change in my early 30s, some people saw it as irresponsible or as a sign I didn't know what I was doing. But I had to remember that I'm living my life, not theirs. Cultural expectations are just one factor to consider, not the ultimate authority on what's right for you. Gender also plays a role in decision-making in many cultures. Women and men may face different expectations and pressures around decisions about career, family, relationships, and lifestyle. For example, women often face more pressure around decisions about having children. The biological clock, social expectations, family pressure, all of these can make decisions about motherhood particularly fraught. Men might face more pressure around career success and financial provision. The expectation to be the breadwinner can make career decisions feel especially high stakes. Again, awareness of these dynamics doesn't mean you have to conform to them, but it helps you understand the context in which you and others are making decisions. Let me talk about some specific types of big decisions in more detail, because each type has its own considerations. Career decisions, as I mentioned, are huge. Your career affects so much of your life. When making career decisions, consider not just the salary and title, but the day-to-day work. Will you enjoy the actual tasks? Consider the people. Will you be working with people you respect and enjoy? Consider the values. Does the work align with your values? Consider the growth. Will you learn and develop? Also consider work-life balance. A high-powered job might pay well, but consume your life. Is that trade-off worth it for you? Only you can answer that. And remember that careers can change. Your first job or career choice doesn't have to be your only one. Many people change careers multiple times. I did. It's increasingly common. Relationship decisions are particularly complex because they involve another person. When deciding about a relationship, whether to commit, to marry, to have children, or to leave, you're making a decision that affects someone else deeply.
Some questions to consider. Do you share fundamental values? Do you want the same things from life? Do you bring out the best in each other? Is there mutual respect? Can you communicate effectively? Do you handle conflict well together? No relationship is perfect. Every partnership requires work and compromise, but there should be a solid foundation of compatibility, respect, and genuine care. And remember, staying in a relationship because you're afraid of being alone, or because you've already invested time, or because of external pressure, these are not good reasons. You deserve to be with someone who's right for you, and they deserve the same. Location decisions can be particularly difficult if they involve leaving family, friends, and familiar surroundings. When deciding where to live, consider career opportunities, lifestyle preferences, cost of living, climate, culture, proximity to loved ones, and your sense of belonging. Some people thrive in big cities, others need nature and quiet. Some people want to live near family, others need distance to be their authentic selves. There's no right answer, only what's right for you. I've moved several times in my life. Each move taught me something. Moving to a big city taught me I could thrive outside my comfort zone. Moving back to a smaller town taught me that sometimes what you thought you wanted isn't actually what you need. Education decisions, particularly around higher education, are significant because of the time and money invested. When choosing what to study, consider your interests, your aptitudes, career prospects, and also the experience of learning itself. Don't just choose a major based on potential earnings. If you hate the subject, those 4 years will be miserable, and you might not even end up in that field anyway. Find something you're genuinely interested in. Also, remember that your major doesn't define your entire career. Many people work in fields unrelated to their degree. The skills you develop in university, critical thinking, communication, research, these transfer to many careers. Financial decisions require balancing short-term and long-term thinking. When making financial decisions, consider not just the immediate impact, but the long-term consequences. Debt for education might make sense if it leads to a career you love and can sustain yourself in. But taking on massive debt for a degree that won't lead to employment, that might not be wise.
Buying property can be a good investment,
but it also ties you to a location. If you value mobility and flexibility, renting might actually be better. Money is a tool. It provides security and opportunities, but it's not the only thing that matters. Sometimes the less lucrative choice is the better choice for your overall well-being. Now, let me share some thoughts about decision regret and how to handle it. Sometimes you make a decision, and later you wish you had chosen differently. You might feel regret, disappointment, or even grief over the path not taken. First, understand that some regret is normal. We can't know how things would have turned out if we had chosen differently. It's natural to wonder, to imagine alternative timelines. But prolonged, intense regret is painful and unproductive. Here's how to handle it. First, acknowledge your feelings. Don't suppress the regret. Feel it, examine it, understand it. What specifically do you regret? The decision itself, or just certain consequences of it? Second, learn from it. What would you do differently? What signs did you miss? What can you learn for future decisions? Regret is only wasted if you learn nothing from it. Third, focus on what you can control now. You can't change the past. You can't undo the decision. But you can control what you do from here. How can you make the best of your current situation? Fourth, practice self-compassion. You made the decision with the information and wisdom you had at the time. You are doing your best. Don't punish yourself for not knowing then what you know now. Fifth, consider whether you can change course. Sometimes the decision you regret can be reversed or modified. If you regret your career choice, you can change careers. If you regret moving somewhere, you can move again. You're not always stuck. I've experienced decision regret. I've made choices I later questioned. But I've learned that regret is often about things outside my control or knowledge at the time. I try to be kind to myself, learn what I can, and move forward. Let me talk about the role of timing in decisions. Sometimes the right decision at the wrong time doesn't work out. Sometimes waiting is the right choice. How do you know if it's the right time? There's no perfect formula, but here are some considerations. Do you have the resources needed for this decision? Not just money, but time, energy, support, knowledge.
If you're completely depleted, it might not be the right time for a major change. Are other aspects of your life stable enough to handle the change? Major decisions often bring stress and upheaval. If multiple areas of your life are in chaos, adding another big change might be overwhelming. Have you done the preparatory work? Some decisions require groundwork. You can't just leap without any preparation. Have you researched, planned, developed necessary skills? But also, don't use not the right time as an excuse to avoid action indefinitely. There's rarely a perfect time. At some point, you have to accept that conditions won't be ideal and move forward anyway. I delayed my career change for years, always finding reasons why it wasn't the right time. Eventually, I realized I was just scared and using timing as an excuse. I had to accept that it would never feel perfectly safe and just do it. Let me share some final reflections about big life decisions. One thing I've learned is that you grow into your decisions. When you first make a big choice, you might feel uncertain or overwhelmed. But as you live with the decision, as you commit to it and work through challenges, you grow into it. It becomes more right over time because you make it right. I didn't feel entirely confident in my teaching career at first. I had moments of thinking, did I make a terrible mistake? But as I kept teaching, learning, improving, the career grew on me. I grew into it. Now I can't imagine doing anything else. Another insight: the courage to make big decisions becomes easier with practice. The first time you make a major life choice, it's terrifying, but each decision you make builds confidence. You learn that you can handle uncertainty, that you can survive mistakes, that you're more resilient than you thought. Now, when I face a big decision, I still feel nervous, but I also remember all the previous decisions I've navigated successfully. I have evidence that I can handle this. I've also learned that big decisions rarely feel 100% right when you make them. If you're waiting to feel completely certain and comfortable, you'll wait forever. Big decisions are scary by nature. Fear doesn't mean you're making the wrong choice. It just means you're making a significant choice. The key is distinguishing between fear of change and fear because something's genuinely wrong. Fear of change feels like nervousness, excitement, and uncertainty mixed together. Fear because something's wrong feels like dread, a sinking feeling, a persistent sense that something's off. Learn to recognize the difference in how these fears feel in your body and mind. Another lesson: you don't have to justify your decisions to everyone.
Some people will understand and support you. Others won't. You can't make everyone happy with your choices, and you shouldn't try. Be willing to explain your reasoning to people who truly care about you and are genuinely trying to understand. But don't waste energy defending yourself to people who are determined to judge you regardless. I've learned to say, I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision and I'm comfortable with it when people question my choices. I don't owe everyone a detailed explanation. One more insight. Some decisions reveal who you really are. When you make a choice that's authentic to you, even if it's difficult or unpopular, you're honoring yourself. These decisions can be transformative, not just in external circumstances, but in your sense of self. When I chose to leave my stable job to pursue teaching, it wasn't just a career change. It was a statement about who I was and what mattered to me. It was me choosing authenticity over security, purpose over comfort. That decision revealed and reinforced my identity. Big decisions can be these moments of self-definition. You're not just choosing a path, you're choosing who you want to be. Finally, I want to emphasize that it's okay to ask for help when facing big decisions. You don't have to figure it all out alone. Talk to trusted friends and family. Seek professional guidance from counselors, therapists, or mentors. Join communities of people facing similar decisions. When I was deciding about my career change, I talked to so many people. I sought advice from teachers, from career counselors, from friends who knew me well. These conversations helped me clarify my thinking, consider angles I hadn't thought of, and feel less alone in the process. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We're not meant to navigate life's biggest choices in isolation. As we wrap up this long conversation about big life decisions, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. Your life is yours to shape. Not your parents', not your partner's, not society's, yours. You're the one who will live with your choices. Make decisions that honor who you are and who you want to become. Big decisions are hard. They're supposed to be hard.
If they were easy, they wouldn't be big decisions. Don't let the difficulty paralyze you. Embrace it as part of the process. You don't need to have everything figured out. Life isn't a puzzle with one correct solution. It's a journey with many possible paths. Choose a path that feels right. Walk it with intention and courage, and trust that you'll figure things out as you go. Mistakes and wrong turns are part of the journey. They're not failures, they're learning experiences. Be willing to make mistakes. Be willing to change course if needed. Flexibility and resilience matter more than making perfect choices. Listen to advice, but ultimately trust yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else knows you. That inner wisdom, that gut feeling, it's valid and important. Don't ignore it. Be patient with yourself as you navigate big decisions. Give yourself time to think, to feel, to process. But also don't let fear keep you stuck forever. Find the balance between careful consideration and courageous action. And remember, you're not alone. Everyone faces big decisions. Everyone struggles with uncertainty and fear. Share your experiences, learn from others, support each other through these pivotal moments. I'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest life decision you've ever made? Or what big decision are you facing right now? How do you approach important choices? Leave a comment below and practice talking about your life decisions in English. I read all the comments and I love hearing your stories. And please, like and subscribe to English Club for more English learning podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know it was long, but I hope you found it meaningful and helpful. Remember, you have the wisdom to make the right choices for your life. Trust yourself, be brave, be authentic, and know that whatever you decide, you have the strength to handle what comes next. Thank you again for being here with me today. Keep practicing your English, keep making choices that honor who you are, and keep moving forward with courage and hope. See you in the next episode. Take care and be kind to yourself as you navigate your own crossroads and turning points. You've got this.